the Young Turks on a somber Monday evening when we have to, of course, discuss what's happening in the country and what happened in Charlottesville over the weekend. There are a lot of angles to that story. First, I'm going to give you a sense of the violence that happened there in this segment. And then afterwards, I'm going to tell you about the victim, Heather Heyer, along with the two police officers who were killed. I'm going to tell you about the guy who committed the crime and the thing he said about concentration camps is bone-chilling, let alone what you're going to see of what he did in real life. And then we're going to discuss Donald Trump's reaction. By the way, there's other beatings that happened, other than the one where people lost their lives with a car crash. Or homicide by vehicle, I guess. There's a lot to get to here, and it is a crazy day, and we will cover this story in every way. We'll also have some other stories in the news as well, but you're going to get the full context here. And the overall theme, as you're about to see here, is unfortunately the brown shirts are here. They're here, and they have now begun acts of violence. So, having said that, let me tell you the main story here. So, this weekend we had a horrific act of violence, actually several acts of violence in Charlottesville. I want to tell you about them. First of all, this is, of course, from a Unite the Right rally. So, when they are talking about uniting the right, who are they talking about? Well, they themselves have said that it was white nationalists, the alt-right, and then, of course, KKK and Nazi images, flags, hoods, all showed up at the rally. And if that is their version of the right, well, I guess they were united in a sense. A lot more people showed up than I honestly would have anticipated, which is also bone-chilling. It started on Friday. The main rally was supposed to be Saturday, and it was. But on Friday night, I want to show you some of the pictures from the rally that they held there. Yes, they brought torches. That imagery is not an accident. It is totally intended. And they started chanting White Lives Matter, and then blood and soil, blood and soil. That's a Nazi chant. And then there were those in the crowd who unmistakably gave the Nazi salute. Now, does that make every person in the crowd a Nazi or a member of the KKK? I suspect not. Was the intent of that rally incredibly clear? Yes. So, you don't go to a rally with torches about white power and not know what they're talking about. So anyone who claims, oh golly gee, I had no idea, well then you're one of the most ignorant people on the planet. They knew exactly what they were doing. And if you notice, they were around a statue. Well, that was part of the point of this whole thing, which is to make sure that Confederate statues are not taken down in the South. That's a statue of Robert E. Lee, and people that were at the rally talking about protecting white heritage and what he fought for. And of course, among the things he fought for, in fact, primary in the things that he fought for, was slavery. So white supremacy back in the day, of course, meant literally that. We rule over you, and we will enslave other races. Now, that's not what's happening today in the South, except for these guys who say that's the heritage that they want to protect. And like some of their ancestors, they too resorted to violence. That brings us to Saturday. So on Saturday, then we had people who were coming in from all parts of the country, and let's see some pictures of that here. And as you can see, they have some white supremacist flags I'm not familiar with. They've got Confederate flags, they've got swastikas, and then the clashes began because the counter-protesters were also there. And so cops were trying to stay in between them, trying to prevent violence. Unfortunately, it didn't work. And the police have gotten some criticism here as well for not stepping in to the right-wing side as they threatened violence, and according to some reports, maced other people in the crowd, attacked them with even gas canisters. Some people understandably saying, well, if they were carrying Skittles or maybe loose cigarettes, would you have attacked them? Not attack them, but for God's sake, at least contain them. As you're about to see, the fact that they did not contain them had deadly consequences. Unfortunately, 2 officers also died in what happened on Saturday. It was not in the midst of the protest. It was a helicopter that they were using to cover the protest and to maintain some sort of order and at least track what was happening. Fortunately, that went down, and 2 officers were killed there as well. Overall, and there they are, Lieutenant H.J. Cullen and Burke M.M. Bates. Every time you hear the stories of people who were killed, it's absolutely heartbreaking. Bates got into the aviation part of the Virginia State Police just in the last year. His wife gave him a Christmas present of learning how to fly. So, and his birthday was supposed to be on Sunday. Every part of this story is heartbreaking. So, we're about to get to the worst part, including, of course, the officers dying. Heather Heyer was killed. So, 3 killed, 19 injured. About 35 went to the hospital and were treated. 19 more seriously injured, obviously, than the others. And I'm going to show you some videos here in a second. But first, before I show you the car crash, I want you to get a sense of these protesters. There's a lot of nonsense, of course, is always online, pretending that they were not hateful. This is just, I mean, you already saw the pictures, you already saw the torches and all the flags, etc. But here's one sense of it. This is actually Fox News, who's trying to get their point of view. Boy, they got it.
Sir, are you in charge here? Where are you guys headed, you know?
Not exactly sure yet. Yeah, we're trying to survive.
They're fucking gassing us, dude. The fucking 2 levers are gassing us, man. Pardon his French?
No, that was not French. Maybe German, but not French. And of course, present-day Germany is a much better place than what they had back in the day, and arguably much tougher on these kind of neo-Nazis than we are. So you get a sense of how hateful that group was, and it's not. It was not a matter of he said, she said. It was not a matter of both sides do it. One side clearly had bent a very, very bad intent going in. And so now, speaking of bad intent, that unfortunately brings us to this particular neo-Nazi, and James Alex Fields Jr., who's 20 years old and who was the criminal who killed Heather Heyer, is an avowed fan of Adolf Hitler and the Nazis and concentration camps. Now, what I'm about to show you is really, really heartbreaking. It's him running into the crowd. So if you're uncomfortable with it, I understand. But I want you to see what hate looks like in America. Here it is. The second video we have of a different angle is, believe it or not, a little worse. So another warning, and here's that same scene.
Go.
So, not only vicious, mean, and apparently killer, but also stupid. Like, he thought he'd get away with it. There's cameras everywhere. He's trying to do a hit and run there, which, of course, he was charged with, along with attempted homicide. I think the second angle was worse because you get a sense of him revving up for it and how he tried to pick up speed before he hit him to make sure he caused the maximum amount of damage. He was from Ohio. He came into the state of Virginia apparently with the intent to do harm, and unfortunately accomplished that mission. So here's some more detail. Groups in Charlottesville, as Huffington Post reports, beat each other with flagpoles and bats, threw punches, chanted slogans, and used chemical sprays on each other at downtown Park. Some reporters covering the event were doused in raw sewage. So they came weaponized, and by the way, it's not just all the things that we just mentioned there, but there were people dressed up in militia outfits, whether any of them are veterans, of course, is completely different question. But they like to play dress up, and unfortunately, the important part of that dress up is the weapons that they brought. So they brought guns, they brought rifles, and by the way, that makes it a little bit, and that's Alex Fields Jr. in the middle there, and whatever Nazi hate group sign that is. I don't know what the hell that. I can't keep up with all the hate groups, but he was part of that crew before he went and got in his car and hurt all those people and killed Heather Heyer, according to the authorities. So they brought more serious weapons too, and to be a little understanding of the police officers on the ground, one side is heavily armed with guns, so that makes it harder for the cops to engage. This is all horrific, man. So now we have Nazis committing violence in America, and police officers a little reluctant to engage. You could argue for many different reasons, but one of them might be, and I get it, that one side is armed to the teeth. So I mean, how much are we? And this was where we are, because we're told and the laws are passed that guns are awesome and weapons are great, and any great American would bring weapons to a protest. Well, now we've got weapons everywhere, and so what are the cops supposed to do? So anyway, I do want to give credit to Attorney General Jeff Sessions in the Justice Department. Not a guy I often give credit to, but in this case, Sessions said Saturday night that State U.S. Attorney Rick Mountcastle has opened a federal investigation into the violence at the rally with the full support of the Justice Department. And Trump was very equivocal, but Sessions was unequivocal, saying that it is likely domestic terrorism, and that certainly they would pursue charges against Fields, but perhaps others as well. So that is a good, strong statement from the Attorney General. Now, finally, let's turn to what the President did, and his reaction was, I would argue, hideous. I want you to watch it and notice who he doesn't name.
We condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides. On many sides. It's been going on for a long time in our country. Not Donald Trump, not Barack Obama. It's been going on for a long, long time.
So he said several times there, on many sides. Both sides do it. Well, one side showed up to do a counter-protest, and look, when you have violence from any side, I condemn it completely. Antifa at Berkeley, etc., and Antifa showed up here, and any kind of agitation from either side is despicable, and we point it out. But in this case, there was no lack of clarity. It was the right wing who did it. It was the neo-Nazis who did it. It was the white nationalists who did it. So Antifa didn't run into, and certainly the overwhelming majority of peaceful counter-protesters there didn't run into people, didn't kill people. So what sides are you talking about? So you're trying to create an equivalency between the Nazis and the non-Nazis? When you say many sides did it, and you refuse to call out white nationalists, you refuse to call out the KKK, the Nazis, and all the other people that showed up. Wouldn't do it. Didn't do it for 2 days. Finally, after immense pressure for 48 hours, and almost every other Republican senator calling him out on it, finally today he said, well, yeah, sure, KKK, white supremacists are bad. Wow, thank you so much. To give you a sense of why that's such a green light, and in some ways the worst part of this story, the Daily Stormer, which is a neo-Nazi website, saw Trump's reaction to that and celebrated and said, you see that? He's not condemning us. Richard, brown shirts are here, right? And they committed an act of violence, and a horrific one, let alone the entirety of the march, and the F word was used against gay people, anti-Jewish slogans, one after another, of course, racist slogans, and the list goes on, and then they commit violence. If we don't all stand up and fight against it, they're going to take that as another green light, and they're going to take that as encouragement of, hey, violence works. You think they're going to win the battle of ideas? Old bankrupt ideology about the differences in races, we defeated that a long, long time ago. They can rise up all they want. They have no facts on their side. Why do you think they resort to violence? Because they're wrong. They can't win a battle of ideas. They can't win a debate, so they go the route of violence. And we as a society have to band together and do it the right way and make sure that these guys do not take hold in America. And they're allowed to have any opinion and speech that they like, but they're not allowed to commit acts of violence. And if we don't discourage that today, we will rue the day that we didn't. So I'm glad to see the Justice Department is on it. Local authorities are on it. But this is intolerable, and this isn't the U.S. And does America look great again? Doesn't look very good right now. But I believe in America, and I think we will rally, and I think we will defeat these monsters that go bump in the night. Okay, now let me give you, unfortunately, one more story about violence that happened at the rally. So in the midst of all the violence that happened in Charlottesville, there's another story of another man being attacked. There was, of course, the neo-Nazi who ran over 19 people and killed Heather Heyer. But DeAndre Harris was part of the counter-protesters, and he'd gone with friends, and he thought the whole situation was over. He was going to a garage when a number of white supremacists surrounded him and started beating him within inches of his life. So let me show you a picture that was taken at the time. Now, he was significantly injured, which I'll tell you about. But he was attacked because he was a counter-protester, and these are white supremacists. So he's black, apparently a good enough reason. He said, they were beating me with the poles. I have 8 staples in my head, a broken wrist, and a chipped tooth. He said his friends noticed that he was not with them. They turned around and at some point noticed that he was underneath these guys, and they came in to help and pulled him out. And Harris says if they hadn't come and done that, they might have killed me. So this is what we have now, lynch mobs in Virginia, in America, again. And Harris went on to say, me and about 5 of my friends were out protesting. We thought the racists left, but at one point they came back. Everyone was exchanging words with the group, but then the KKK and white supremacists just rushed us. He also went on to point out that the beating happened right beside the police department, and no police were there to help me at all. My mom is now thinking about suing the city of Charlottesville. Look, so a lot of people are frustrated with the police. Now, I'm of 2 minds on that. I think that the police are pursuing the people who did violence. They lost 2 of their own in what happened over the weekend with the helicopter crash. And the right-wingers, a lot of them were armed. So if you go into that crowd, God knows what happens next. Imagine if they all start shooting. This is insanity. And they told us, no, the white nationalists are just speaking. Well, do they look like they're just speaking now? Looks like they're doing a lot more than speaking. And they said, no, guns protect people. Does it look like it's protecting people? The cops are afraid of going in to deal with violent protesters because they have weapons. This is an absolute disaster. So Adam Serwer said, I personally saw Ferguson police use crushing force against protesters for much less than what the Nazis in Charlottesville are doing today. And again, people online saying, well, maybe if those guys, instead of having poles or weapons or cars ramming into people, had Skittles or loose cigarettes, then the cops would have been all over them. Now, again, I don't think that's exactly fair, because that was an incredibly volatile situation. And if the cops charged the right wing after they started causing violence, well, first of all, they have a responsibility to. That is why I'm torn on this issue. If you see them using the mace, throwing the sewage, as they apparently did, throwing tear gas canisters, well, then you got to take action. And I remember in Ferguson, there was not any hesitation, as Sarah points out here, that to take action. On the other hand, there was not people who were armed in the crowd and ready to fire back. And the right wing, as you see in these stories, not everybody in the right wing, but significant portions enough to show up here and do damage and do violence. For them, violence is an option. They don't view that as illegitimate. They view it as part of how they would seize power. And here they are doing it. So, look, man, in some ways, I'm horrified by the inaction, but in other ways, I understand that if the cops drew weapons there, it could have been way worse. And probably now he's getting beaten in a garage, and a lot of the cops are in the streets. So so on that portion, I think they were in a very, very tough situation. The ACLU of Virginia says clash between protesters and counter-protesters. Police say, quote, will not intervene until given command to do so. So apparently they were not given the command to do so. And understand the two different contexts. There's all the protesters and counter-protesters outside, and then the car rams into the crowd for a neo-Nazi does that, injures 19, kills people. Then the cops, of course, do take action. In the garage, we don't know that there were any cops in the garage. The police department is around the corner, but again, it is mayhem there in Charlottesville over the weekend. But I think most importantly, the one thing that is crystal clear is one side views violence as legitimate and part of their modus operandi. And so this is how the brown shirts begin, and if you let them get away with it, they're going to do it twice as much next time. So there's all this discussion online about whether people that showed up at a protest, that their face should be shown by the media. You showed up at a public protest. But put that aside. These people that are beating DeAndre Harris, they're committing a crime. So I assume and hope that they're now on wanted lists, pursued by the authorities for serious assault. Showing their face so that we can capture fugitives should be something that the entire country should agree on. These are dark, dark times. We've got to be very careful as to how we respond. And the way we should respond is calmly, but forcefully with the government. Not people taking action on their own, but asking our justice departments and our police to actually protect our community and to serve justice. And so far, at least in arresting Fields, starting a wider investigation, they have done so. So let's give them an opportunity to complete that work. And I think when they do, hopefully it sends a very strong message. Not in America. Okay, we got to take a break. When we come back, a lot of the fallout, including from Trump and his reaction to this, and as I alluded to there, how the right wing took this, or the alt-right took this as a green light for them. And I'm going to tell you about the victims and a little bit more about Alex Fields Jr., the terrorist at hand here, and what he actually believed, including his thoughts on Nazis and concentration camps when we return. All right, post-game here in Studio B. It's a green screen magic of internet television. A lot of breaking stories. Any conversation that starts with marriage is an interesting thing deserves a little bit of...
When the kid cries, perhaps that's that is an opportunity to do so. It's an opportunity to do some parenting.
Yeah, parenting is you cry, you're gone.
Oh my God.
I love that video.
Yeah, man, I got a great achoo. You're like, my mouth was open, she sneezed in my eye.
I used to have Donut Tower next to my desk. Yeah, I'll dress up like a girl.
I sound confident now, Anna. Yeah. When we're off the air, I'm going to be like, how is this going to work?
When you get literally asked why 21 straight times.
Yeah.
And like at some point, you're fucking with me now, right?
So I dumped the kids off at her mom's, and I drove down to La Jolla for a day.
Get out, kids.
They're like, but Daddy, no.
Why? What do you mean why? You asked me to look at you. You did it. You brought it up. You know you're doing it. Why? I don't know why. I was reading. She's lovely. Here's what's different. Like, it is a different feeling. Everybody says this, but it's 5:11 when we're shooting this. I can't wait to go home. Like that I can't wait to see it.
What you guys do is allow us to be open and honest, and we don't have to worry about censorship. We don't have to worry about sponsors telling us what we can and can't say. We're accountable by our audience and our audience only, and I absolutely love that. That's the best part about being a member. We love you guys.
Robbie Canal, he calls his work urban beautification.
I didn't go out to be a street artist or to make posters. I was just compelled to do it. I was mad enough. It didn't matter. It was like a form of minor civil disobedience even. You know, like, fuck you. How about your higher ground? Power operates to self-replicate itself to maintain the status quo so it stays in power. When you go to do something like this to express yourself in public about an issue you care about, make sure you pick the bigger weapon, and the weapon is knowledge. The one thing about street art, it's not like I put up my posters to change anybody's mind about anything. The difference between propaganda and the kind of art I do is propaganda is telling people what to think. The way the art works, where the art works, is between the time you see it and the time you figure it out for yourself. I'm an optimist. I might have made a lot of ugly things about a lot of ugly people. It's out of love. Not for them.
All right, back on the youngsters. Guys, I'm going to get to your tweets a little bit later and interact with you guys, but we have a lot of news to give you, so let me keep going. Now let me go to Trump's reaction here. Okay. So after the horrific events in Charlottesville, Donald Trump had a chance to speak out about it, and he absolutely blew that opportunity. Condemning Nazis is about as low a bar as you can possibly have, and he couldn't clear it. And not only condemning Nazis, but Nazis committing violence in America, and he couldn't clear that bar. So first, before Fields ran into the crowd with his car, there was already mayhem and violence and right-wing throwing tear gas canisters, according to the reporters at the scene, and tear gas and all other things that was happening. At that point, Donald Trump starts tweeting. He says, "We all must be united and condemn all that hate stands for. There's no place for this kind of violence in America. Let's come together as one." So far, no problem. I would have been far more clear on who's committing the violence, but this is the beginning so far. And then a little bit later in the morning on Saturday, he says, "I'm in Bedminster for meetings and press conference on Virginia. All that we have done and are doing to make it better, but Charlottesville, sad." Okay, still no calling out of the white nationalists who organized this rally, Unite the Right. No calling out of the torches that they were carrying, the swastikas, the Klan gear, etc. Let alone with clearly identifying who's doing the violence. And the white nationalists who organized this, including Richard Spencer, took this as an encouraging sign. Saw Trump's tweets and said, "Did Trump just denounce Antifa?" Meaning, those are the protesters who some call leftists, but are more inclined towards anarchy. And so, in other words, the white nationalists going, "See, Trump didn't call us out. We think he's referring to the counter-protesters." Well, if you don't say it clearly, they get to make that claim. So Trump made it way worse when he finally did speak out and said this.
We condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides. On many sides. It's been going on for a long time in our country. Not Donald Trump, not Barack Obama. It's been going on for a long, long time.
So, of course, he mentions not Donald Trump, not Barack Obama, because he thinks people are going to blame him for it. He says, "No, it's not my fault." Well, then why don't you say the white nationalists shouldn't have done it? Why don't you say the KKK and the neo-Nazis that were rallying together shouldn't have done it? It's not that hard. It's literally the easiest thing you can do. He doesn't want to say it because you know why? Because he thinks that's his base. And he doesn't want to upset his base. It's grotesque, man, because they're going to take it as a green light, and as I'm about to show you, they did. Now, he let this fester for 2 days. Other Republican senators are going on TV saying it's domestic terror. Ted Cruz saying it's domestic terrorism. Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, saying domestic terrorism. And saying that it was clearly the white nationalists who were doing it and the far right wing that was doing it. But Trump won't say it. And they took it as a green light. But finally, he comes out and makes this statement on Monday.
As I said on Saturday, we condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence. It has no place in America. Racism is evil, and those who cause violence in its name are criminals and thugs, including the KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other hate groups that are repugnant to everything we hold dear as Americans. Those who spread violence in the name of bigotry strike at the very core of America.
And that took 2 days. Meanwhile, Ivanka's tweeting, everybody's all over TV. Finally, after all the pressure in the world and every advisor saying, "Hey, idiot, it's not hard to condemn the KKK. No, you didn't win because of the neo-Nazis. Yes, the neo-Nazis were probably on your side. That's part of them because they just showed up in red hats saying "Make America Great Again" at the Charlottesville rally, let alone all the polling evidence, etc. But they're not the core of your voters. And by the way, you're so stupid. The core of your voters are people who couldn't stand Hillary Clinton, not Nazis in America. But Trump thinks, "Hey, that's my guys. That's my boys. That's why I didn't want to call them out." Finally, when he does hear, he's reading from a teleprompter. Somebody had to write it out for him. They're like, "God forbid that we let Trump speak off the cuff on this. He will say horrific things. Write it for him and make sure the schmuck says it word for word." And then when he does, he says, "I condemn, violence from every place, including the KKK and neo-Nazis. Wow, are you not merciful? Thank you for finally showing up." So Jim Acosta afterwards is going to try to ask him some questions and listen to their interaction.
Mr. President, can you explain why you did not condemn those hate groups by name over the weekend? They've been condemned. They have been condemned. And why are we not having a press conference today? You said on Friday you'd have a press conference. We had a press conference. We just had a press conference. Can we ask you some more questions? It doesn't bother me at all, but I like real news, not fake news. Give that kid. Thank you, everybody. I'm not saying like the president. Haven't you spread a lot of fake news yourself?
They've been condemned. What else do you want? Can we have a press conference where we ask you questions? This is a press conference. Can I ask you a question? No, you're fake news. Okay, so apparently not a press conference. So, most importantly, You can get into a silly debate of, well, I mean, he probably in his head meant the KKK when he said many, many sides. You might have that debate, but the neo-Nazis did not. At the Daily Stormer, they were thrilled. That's a neo-Nazi website. And when they saw Trump blame many sides, here's what they wrote on their blog. They said, Trump comments were good. He didn't attack us. He just said the nation should come together. Nothing specific against us. He said that we need to study why people are so angry and implied that there was hate on both sides. So he implied that Antifa are haters. There was virtually no counter-signaling of us at all. He said he loves us all. Daily Stormer is named after a Nazi propaganda during World War II publication that did that kind of propaganda. So here are the neo-Nazis in America saying, see? He said, oh, it's on many sides. That means he loves us all. You know what that is? It's called a dog whistle. Except it used to be a dog whistle that was subtle. Now it's a human whistle. We can all hear it. And certainly the Daily Stormer heard it, and they viewed Trump's messages overwhelmingly positive for neo-Nazis in America. That's not us saying it. That's them saying it. They went on to say, no condemnation at all. When asked to condemn, Trump just walked out of the room. Really, really good. God bless him. So here's where we are, guys, where Nazis are saying, God bless the President of the United States. He's been really, really good to us. He loves us, and that's why he wouldn't condemn us. So Trump knew what message he was sending. If you're not well-versed in politics and you think, well, he seemed to condemn some sort of violence, no. That message was received. And for white supremacists all across the country, it was a giant blinking green light. Go forward, because when I condemn it a couple of days later because they make me do it, I don't really mean it. Now, how dangerous are these guys? So they say things like, we have an army. This is the beginning of a war. Now, look, you can talk about symbolic armies, and everybody does that. And so I wouldn't have read you that quote if it wasn't for the second part, the beginning of a war. So do they mean literally violence and war? Well, we saw it happen in Charlottesville, but here's more from the Daily Stormer, again, in regards to what happened this weekend. He said, and to everyone, know this. We are now at war, and we are not going to back down. We are going to go bigger than Charlottesville. We are going to go huge. We're going to take over the country. We learned a lot today, and we are going to remember what we learned. This has only just begun. One of the things they learned today is that the president is on their side and won't call out Nazis. This is what we've sunk to. Again, if you think, oh no, a president taking his time and waiting 2 days. Imagine if it was a Muslim radical who'd done the attack. You think Trump waits 2 days? He usually tweets before we find out who even did it. When he thinks it's Muslims, he'll take credit for it. After Orlando, he said, I appreciate all the congratulations for me predicting that it was Muslims. But when it comes to white supremacists and domestic terrorism, all of a sudden he can't find a phone to tweet from. He can't find a camera. The guy who loves cameras can't find one for 2 whole days, and finally comes and says, fine, including the KKK and the Nazis, I guess. So in case you were confused about that message, the Nazis were not. Nazis in America are thrilled, and they say they're going to go bigger than Charlottesville. Thanks a lot, Donald Trump. We appreciate it. And now, among the many terrible excuses given is from Tom Bossert, who's a White House Homeland Security advisor. He went on television and said this, making an excuse for Trump's inaction.
What I would say is that the president not only condemned the violence and stood up at a time and a moment when calm was necessary and didn't dignify the names of these groups and people, but rather addressed the fundamental issue. And so, Jake, what you need to focus on is the rest of his statement. The president didn't just call for human beings to respect one another, which is his pragmatist, core, fundamental, bare minimum, but he called for, ideally, Americans to love one another.
So the new excuse is, no, we don't want to dignify them by saying their names. You don't say their names when they're terrorists. Really? Because here's Donald Trump back in November of 2015 as he's running for president. When will President Obama issue the words radical Islamic terrorism? He can't say it, and unless he will, the problem will not be solved. Back then, you gotta say their names. You gotta say their names. Oh, it's my voters. It's my supporters. It's the people who love me the most in America. Nazis and KKK and white supremacists. Oh, don't say their name. That would legitimize them. Wink. And one more tweet from Trump in June of 2016. He said, is President Obama going to finally mention the words radical Islamic terrorism? If he doesn't, he should immediately resign in disgrace. If you can't say the words KKK, neo-Nazis, and white supremacists for 2 whole days, then maybe we should apply the same standard to you that you made up for Obama. Resign in disgrace, because that's what you are. You're absolutely disgraceful. Okay, now let's go to the victims. So there were 19 people injured in Charlottesville, but 3 died. First of all, I want to tell you about 2 police officers who were killed: Lieutenant Jay Cullen and then Officer Bates. 48 and 41-year-olds. Actually, Bates would have been 41 the very next day on Sunday, but he was killed before that. They're both in the aviation department of the Virginia State Police, and anytime you hear these stories, it's heartbreaking. They were also in a unit that protected the governor, and so the governor said they were part of our family, and it was heartbroken to see what happened. As far as we know, it's just a crash. No one is suspecting foul play, but they were covering the protests, which then turned into riots by white nationalist thugs. So they died in that sense in the line of duty. And, his wife, for Bates, had just over Christmas bought him lessons for flying, and he had just gotten into the aviation department. They both had kids. They both had 2 kids, one a son and a daughter, the other one twins. 2 sons for one of them. So that's the police who were killed in an accident as they were trying to monitor these protests that wound up becoming riots. One person was killed on purpose, and that's Heather Heyer. So the neo-Nazi who ran into a crowd injured 19 but killed Heather Heyer. And so I want to go and we often talk about the people who did it, and I will give you more details in another video about the guy who committed this act of violence. But I also want you to know the victims, and I want them to have a name and a face as well, for you to know their stories, the people who suffer from terrorism. We've done this in a lot of other mass shootings and acts of terrorism, and we're going to do it in this case as well. So reporters found Heather's mom, Susan Bro, and she gave some very touching quotes about her daughter. She said she always had a very strong sense of right and wrong. She always, even as a child, was very caught up in what she believed to be fair. Somehow I almost feel that this is what she was born to be, is a focal point for change. I'm proud that what she was doing was peaceful. She wasn't there fighting with people. So she was a counter-protester and had just showed up to say to the Nazis and the Klan, not on our watch. And by all accounts, everyone who was run over there was part of the peaceful protests. And I hate even having to clarify that. And this guy, the terrorist who did it, targeted the peaceful protesters out of hatred, not hatred of who Heather was, that no Heather at all, didn't care, hatred of others. And that's exactly what Heather was trying to fight her whole life. Her mom says it was important for her to speak up for the people that she felt were not being heard, to speak up when the injustices were happening, and she saw in the lives of many of her African-American friends, particularly, and her gay friends, that equal rights were not being given. They also found her father and talked to Mark Heyer, and he said, my daughter was a strong woman that had passionate opinions about the equality of everyone, and she tried to stand up for that. With her, it wasn't lip service, it was real. All too real, unfortunately. And he continued, my daughter's life, I'm proud of her for standing up. She had more courage than I did. She had a stubborn backbone. She thought she was right. She would stand there and defy you. He said, but if I understand her, she wanted to do it peacefully and with a fierceness of heart that comes with her conviction. That's certainly what she had on Saturday. One last quote from her father. He said, "People need to stop hating, and they need to forgive each other." A lot more magnanimous than I think I could have been, and so bless him for being that thoughtful on a day that tragic. And I want to conclude by going back to her mom's comments. Susan Bro added, "I don't want her death to be a focus for more hatred. I want her death to be a rallying cry for justice and equality and fairness and compassion. I'm very sorry that Fields chose that path because he has now ruined his life, as well as robbed a great many of us of someone we love very much." And she finished by saying, "No mother wants to lose a child, but I'm proud of her. I'm proud of what she did." Well, we're all proud of Heather Heyer and all the peaceful protesters that were there to stand up against the fear and the hatred. And some of them, including most especially Heather, paid far too great a price for that. So for Heather and for everyone else in the country, we've got to stand up together and say, not on our watch. So these guys who spread white supremacism and hatred, we can't let them get away with it. So we're going to do things the right way. Peaceful protests. When there is violence, take it to the authorities. But for Heather's sake, I hope that we could all have the courage that she did to stand up against this hatred. We all owe you a debt. Now, I want to tell you about the guy who did it. And on the first day, we mentioned names to give you guys, the complete story. Afterwards, we try to not emphasize the names of these terrorists and mass shooters because a lot of times they're in it for the glory. So, but today, let me tell you what happened. So we now know who the terrorist was who ran his car into peaceful protesters in Charlottesville. It's a 20-year-old named James Alex Fields Jr. He lives in Ohio now. He grew up in parts of Kentucky, drove into Virginia to be part of these Unite the Right protests for white nationalists. We have a picture of him in the rally. He's there in the middle. I don't know what in the hell they're holding there, and I don't know the different kinds of white supremacists and the different goofy signs that they bring, but he had brought that, and he brought a shield. But he apparently also brought a weapon, which was his car, and he rammed into the crowd in a grotesque way. Authorities say Fields is being held on suspicion of second-degree murder, malicious wounding, and failure to stop in an accident that resulted in death. Look, you know what? I'm going to show you video 14 again, and we showed this earlier in the show in the context of explaining the whole story. But if you didn't see that video, I want to give you a sense of what he did, and then I'm going to tell you how much he liked Nazis. Again, if you're uncomfortable with this, which is very, very understandable, heavy warning here that this is him running into the crowd. Go. Okay, so what does he believe? Well, they went and talked to his mother, Samantha Bloom. Fields' mother said she denied to the Associated Press that her son was a white supremacist. Well, and she said he once had an African-American friend. So they went and asked other people. Now, that's very understandable coming from the mother, and don't hold the sins of the son against the parents. But they found his teacher, Derek Weiner, and they asked him, and he said that he had long conversations with Fields when he was in high school, and tried to talk him out of it, but he said that Fields thought, quote, Nazis were pretty cool guys. That's Derek Weimer, I'm sorry. And Weimer also said that Fields was, quote, an open admirer of Adolf Hitler and the Nazis. And others at the school that interacted with Fields confirmed that. In fact, now let's go to an ABC News report where they explain that two of Fields' classmates told ABC News about a trip to Europe that a group of students took after graduation in 2015 when they visited the Dachau concentration camp in Germany. When they arrived at the concentration camp, Fields allegedly said, "This is where the magic happened," according to two students. Okay, so if you're seeing any propaganda online about how Fields was not a Nazi, well, he apparently admired them and thought they made magic happen in concentration camps. So are we surprised that the guy who thought the Nazis who killed 13 million people overall in gas chambers and other places were cool guys would also be interested in violence and committing violence of his own? Can't hold anybody to account for just speech in America. That's not what we do. But when you actually take action and you kill people, obviously there should be heavy, heavy consequences. So luckily the cops have caught him and he will be tried. And to say that I wish that they and hope that they bring him to justice would be a great understatement. This is the face of domestic terrorism. Guys like Fields will feel emboldened to commit violence in the name of white supremacy in America. Okay, when we come back, speaking of that ugly face, unfortunately we have more from them to give you a sense of who exactly was at this rally, and then Republican reaction. So we'll be right back.
TYT is unique in a lot of ways.
I'm gonna ask some uncomfortable questions.
I feel like I missed out.
So what is going on? If I don't eat, my head's going to explode.
As I take my shirt off, just goes, is that your body?
Now we move to inappropriate story number 2.
I just never felt guilty about masturbation.
It's amazing.
I could take partial credit for opening up your sexuality.
I was a kid in the pool with the shirt on. Let's just call it what it is. I was that kid.
Well, you deal with the bitch side of it, right? But you're my boss, so that's what happens.
I think we're more likely to go in there. They do see it from a frame of the rich and the powerful, and they don't realize it.
The last time that happened, we elected Abraham Lincoln.
I don't know. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we unfucked the world?
You and I are disasters.
Don't stereotype all cops. Don't stereotype all any blowing up like Dave Kohler on Twitter. That's pretty good progress. I didn't know you could leave positive comments. It's a very TYT thing. So do a whole bunch of depressing stuff, so that at the end I can give you winning is, in terms of change and positive change, is not just possible, it's inevitable.
Great time to be alive.
Let's burn this mother down. That's what you're saying? Fuck it, let's go do it. That's why I keep thanking you guys for being members. Because together, we got their attention. Thanks for tuning in, and as always, stay strong.
Hey, Jake, what's up?
And my VCR keeps flashing 12, but it's not even midnight. Go.
Damn it, they failed us! And if you're not angry about that, Michael, and any of you out there, then you're damn wrong! Because you should be angry!
Genuine. Going online as one of the young Turks isn't afraid. 3, 2, 1. Jake,
I think a TV station is this. The whole point is for me to yell and scream and tell you what I think.
it's right out of like Wayne's World.
This guy on this little rinky-dink website is speaking truth to power. We've been averaging 600,000 views a day, beating most of the cable shows in America. We're the largest online news show in the world. We're celebrating our 1 billionth view.
More politics ahead with Cenk Uygur.
He knew that the MSNBC opportunity was an experiment. And Phil and host beat CNN headline news combined. At some point, they want to give me a show.
Every single year, that comes out of our paycheck. We put it in, and you're saying we were suckers.
When you, as a host, tells someone you're interviewing to shut up, that's going to raise a red flag.
That guy needed a Paul Bless shut up.
If President Obama's doing the wrong thing, I'm not going to tell you that he's doing the right thing so I can quote support him. He says to me, you won't believe the meeting that I just had.
The head of MSNBC talked to me.
They want him off the air. Cenk took an incredible risk.
We're supposed to challenge the government. That's the role of the media.
The Democrats and the Republicans are here to screw you. And who on the air is saying it?
I wouldn't have done what he did.
That if I'm going to be a talk show host, I'm going to be the biggest talk show host in the country. I don't think anyone else does it better. I don't think anyone's even close.
Before you know it, I'll be back on your TV doing an actual show. I guarantee it.
All right, back in the Young Turks, guys. Again, sorry, not a lot of time here. Just a couple of quick tweets. The flower donut emoji said, "Cenk, quick correction. You called him a criminal. He's a terrorist. Don't worry, I fixed that later, as you can see." You saw later in the show. Brian Newton wrote in, "This country has always been sick with hate and weapons, mixed with economic insecurity and changing times. It's a dangerous mix." Yeah, so Fields, by the way, was, of course, not wealthy. He made like $650 a week, or maybe every 2 weeks. I mean, he was not in good shape. So for a long time, we weaponized people like that in this country and then set them against other people not doing well in an effort to pit us against one another instead of worrying about what's actually causing the problems. Last one, Jay Censored writes in, "Cenk, you're being way too easy on Virginia police. Imagine Muslims with guns marching. How long would it take for police to use violence?" So these are all fair points, and I don't know. I do know that whenever the right wing shows up with guns, they get away with it. The Bundy guys got away with it for a long, long time, both down in Nevada and then up in Oregon. These guys got away with it. Now again, they are being pursued by the authorities today. So I don't. There isn't a. I've never seen a Muslim American rally with weapons. So theoretically, they would have the same rights as any other American and could show up in states that permit it with open weapons. But my guess is you're right that would not turn out the same for them. Okay, so let's go back to what happened in Charlottesville here to give you last couple of pieces of context here. Okay. So in Charlottesville, we had the violence over the weekend, and 19 injured, 3 killed, 2 in an accident, and 1 by a domestic terrorist who ran her over, along with over a dozen people. So I wanted to give you guys context as to who these guys are, because the right wing will be busily pretending that they are not hateful. So I don't want you to be confused. So first of all, on Friday night, they gave us a preview where they came in with torches. Let's show you that. Some of these folks claim, well, no, we're not racist. We just showed up to protect Robert E. Lee's Confederate memorial, and we showed up with torches. Just probably a coincidence. I don't know. You might remember other guys with torches. Let's take a look at the next picture. Oh, they also had torches. Huh. What a wild coincidence. Yeah. So that seems believable. Well, then let's go to the things that they chanted to see if that gave us a clearer sense of who they were. They chanted White Lives Matter, Blood and Soil, which is a term that the Nazis used to chant, so that's great, and fuck you faggots. So nothing but hate, wall-to-wall hate against Jews, against blacks, against gay Americans. If you were still unclear, and then there's this gentleman trying to make it even more clear. So he's not alone. There was swastikas in the crowd. And then we go to the Klan guys with their Klan symbolism. So, well, they called it Unite the Right, and I guess in some ways they did. Congratulations, you've united the Ku Klux Klan and the Nazis. If that's your version of the right wing, I didn't say it, you did. So, these are horrible, horrible people. Not convinced yet? Let's go to someone that Fox News caught up with.
Sir, are you in charge here? Where are you guys headed, you know?
Not exactly sure yet. Yeah, we're trying to survive. They're fucking gassing us, dude. The fucking two levers are gassing us, man.
Pardon his French?
Again, not French. It's, you know, every once in a while they'll say, no, the alt-right is not anti-Semitic. No, they don't like Muslims, they don't like Mexicans. What, that's okay? No, they just hate other people, not Jews. It's okay. They don't like the Black Lives Matter. They don't like any Black Americans that stand up for their rights. They don't like any of those guys. But no, they don't hate the Jews. Does it look like they don't hate the Jews? Okay, you can say that's just one guy, but remember, they chanted blood and soil, and the swastikas are kind of a dead giveaway. And then another chant rose up in the crowd, quote, Jews will not replace us. Pretty sure their hatred goes all around. So, here's the poster that they put up to try to bring people to this Unite the Right rally, filled with Confederate flags, plus what is a facsimile of Nazi symbols. All right, here's another guy for you guys. Again, another swastika flag there. And so, look, there weren't... this is damning with faint praise. There were less swastika flags than Confederate flags.
Right?
Their quotes. Many in the media spend an awful lot of time focusing on what the president said and criticisms of what the president said instead of criticizing those who brought that hatred and violence to the streets.
Yes, you know why? Because there's always been the KKK in America. There's always been neo-Nazis. So, and from time to time, they've taken violent action. But it is supposed to be the president that stands up for all of us. It's supposed to be a government that condemns it, brings law and order, rule of law, and actually makes sure that you protect our citizens. So having terrorism in America, unfortunately, is something that has happened before. Having a president not condemning the terrorism because he thinks it's their voters is unique and horrific. If you had any sense at all, you'd be able to understand that. But he's a pathetic yes man for Donald Trump. So there he is, coddling Trump and condoning his actions. So now, let's be fair though, there were a lot of Republicans who were much clearer than the president was, including his attorney general. And Jeff Sessions has been criticized in the past for issues relating to race, but here I think he did exactly the right thing. I want to show you a clip from him.
Was this domestic terror? Well, it doesn't meet the definition of domestic terrorism in our statute.
You can be sure we will charge and advance the investigation toward
the right way to do it, and he's not alone. There was a lot of Republicans who came out and were strong on this issue. Senator Lindsey Graham said, I would urge the president to dissuade these groups that he's their friend. So a lot I disagree with all of these guys on, but bless their hearts on being clear here. Anthony Scaramucci went on TV, of course, White House Communications Director for Donald Trump, for about 3 seconds. He said it was much harsher as it relates to white supremacists, that it was incumbent on him to do so because of the moral authority of the presidency, that he should have been much harsher when it came to white supremacists. H.R. McMaster, the National Security Advisor, said that it was a form of terrorism, so that is also clear. Senator Cory Gardner said, Mr. President, we must call evil by its name. These were white supremacists, and this was domestic terrorism. Marco Rubio said, very important for the nation to hear the president describe events in Charlottesville for what they are, a terror attack by white supremacists. He's indicating, of course, the president did not do that because he didn't. And finally, on Monday, the president changed his tune 2 days later and said, fine, including the KKK and neo-Nazis. Senator Ted Cruz over the weekend came out and said it's tragic and heartbreaking to see hatred and racism once again mar our great nation with bloodshed. He said the Nazis, the KKK, and white supremacists are repulsive and evil, and all of us have moral obligation to speak out against the lies, bigotry, anti-Semitism, and hatred that they propagate. So it's good to hear him say that. One more from Cruz. He said, having watched the horrifying video of the car deliberately crashing into a crowd of protesters, I urge the Department of Justice to immediately investigate and prosecute this grotesque act of domestic terrorism. And finally, one more Republican for you, Senator Chuck Grassley from Iowa. He said, what white nationalists are doing in Charlottesville is homegrown terrorism that can't be tolerated anymore. And so that's a great way to explain it. And see, number one, Donald Trump, it wasn't that hard. All these your fellow Republicans are doing it, and they're doing it very forcefully and clearly. So for all of you saying that, oh no, Trump couldn't have said it this way, apparently he could have, because they all did. Secondarily, I just want to give you the full context and give credit to the Republicans who did do the right thing. And thirdly, I don't want you to lose hope, because I think that there is going to come a point when the people in power go, no, we're not going to have Nazis in America. We're not going to have them. I mean, we always do, but we're not going to have them committing acts of violence in America and getting away with it. We're not going to have a president that encourages that and doesn't condemn it clearly. So, you always think Trump crossed the line, and then he seems to get beyond it. But I think he's crossed one too many lines. And the fact that he couldn't clear the lowest of the bars, which is condemning Nazi violence in America, I think is going to change a lot of minds, not on the Democratic side or even among independents, but I think among Republican supporters, donors, most importantly, because they control the party, and others in power that go, this isn't what we signed up for. I know we wanted large tax cuts, but this is not a price worth paying for that. Besides which, other establishment Republicans and a lot of establishment Democrats would give you those giant tax cuts anyway. You don't need the neo-Nazi package to come along with it. Finally, I want to end on a Democrat, because this was very powerful. So John Dingell, who was the longest-serving congressman in United States history, now finally retired, is now 91 years old. And he said, what happened yesterday was radical terrorism. And he identified the president as in the tweet to make sure the president sees it. And he said, the refusal to identify, denounce it, and fight it makes one complicit in it. And he ended by saying, I signed up to fight Nazis 73 years ago, and I'll do it again if I have to. Hatred, bigotry, and fascism should have no place in this country. Really powerful to hear a World War II veteran saying, if I got to, I will stand a post, and we will not let those Nazis win here. All right, now, final story for you guys. I know it's a long day and lots of stories, and there's more on Charlottesville in the second hour, and very important updates on that as well. But I'm going to include the McMaster story in today's rundown, because it is actually somewhat related. It's the same alt-right crowd that's going after him, so let me explain. So the White House National Security Advisor is H.R. McMaster. He's a general, and he's picked by Donald Trump, well-respected. Now, I'm positive that when you got onto policy issues, there's a lot that I would disagree with McMaster on. And, in fact, on one of the core issues that they're fighting on, which is whether to increase troops in Afghanistan. I disagree with McMaster, and I've said on the show several times, I appreciate Donald Trump's hesitancy to put more troops in. Now, as we found out, of course, part of the reason for that is they want to privatize the military and send in private mercenaries instead, which does not help the situation at all. McMaster is opposed to that, and he's very right about that. So that's all the way of saying it's not like I've got a dog in this fight. I'm not a fan of McMaster, and I'm certainly not a fan of his policies. But he's been having difficulties with Steve Bannon, who is part of the alt-right, proudly so, and has said in the past that Breitbart, which is a publication he ran before joining the Trump team, was the home of the alt-right. And so the alt-right has unleashed on McMaster because of this power struggle. One of the original reasons for it is not based on policy. It's that Steve Bannon got the president to put him on the National Security Council, which is outrageous. He has no experience in the field. He has no business being part of that at all. Chief strategist, you want to strategize about how to get white nationalist voters to vote for Trump? That's your business. It's horrific business, but it certainly has no business in the National Security Council. So McMaster basically had him removed and has recently fired some of his acolytes for writing insane memos about how the Marxists and Maoists and Islamists are planning to work together to undermine the president. Just total Looney Tune stuff. So on that stuff, again, McMaster is right. But where it gets really dirty is the campaign against McMaster. So Axios has a update on that, and they say the bare-knuckle campaign to remove National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster from the White House is about to get much uglier. It was already ugly. There was tons of articles written about him and how he's part of the globalists, and at the same time against Israel. We'll get into that in a second. But apparently they're going to take it to a new level now. And by the way, many other things said about McMaster on Breitbart and by many members of the alt-right community, such as they are. So Jonathan Swan at Axios explains the new line of attack. Outside forces opposed to McMaster are going to allege he has a drinking problem. According to sources outside the Trump administration familiar with the anti-McMaster campaign, the controversial nationalist Mike Cernovich, who has an inside track on the anti-McMaster campaign, teased the alcohol attack in an internet video with Alex Jones of the website InfoWars. Anti-McMaster forces believe this attack will harm his standing with the president, who's a teetotaler. So they made up all sorts of specifics about his so-called drinking habit. These guys are perennial liars. They lie for a living. I wouldn't believe one word of what any of them said. And I don't know, nor do I care about what McMaster drinks or doesn't drink. I bring that to you because they have no bounds. There is no bounds of reason or decency with these people. And as Priebus once told Bannon in another story that came out last week, he went up to him back when Priebus was in the White House. He said, Steve, you know when you get these guys to say these terrible things about people, we know it's you. Everybody knows it's you. You used to run Breitbart. Like, you're not tricking anyone. We know what you're up to. And Bannon's like, what, me? Oh, little old me? Oh, did Breitbart write a story? Did all my allies in the alt-right write stories about McMaster? Oh, that's probably a coincidence. What ridiculous liars. And honestly, scumbags these guys are. They want to destroy people personally. They do it for sport, and they think that, that's how you play politics. And, sometimes you got to hold a rally in Charlottesville with torches and Confederate flags and some swastikas. And sometimes you got to personally destroy someone who's your political opponent. Battle of ideas. We're the alt-right, white nationalists. Of course they can't win the battle of ideas. They've lost it entirely. So they go personal. Now, inside the White House, at least as regards to anyone but Trump, it is not working, of course. Another official told me, Jonathan Swan says, the majority of the senior staff have rallied around McMaster and believe that all of the attacks against him are divorced from reality. To which I say, of course! The alt-right does not care about facts, does not care about reality. It's funny because that's usual projection that the right wing does. They'll say we care about facts, we don't care about emotions. That's not remotely true. almost all of these things that they charge others, their opponents with, are made up, are lies. In reality, all they care about is one emotion, or two emotions: fear and hatred. Fear and hatred. Those are their emotions, and that's what they care about, and they think by any means necessary. One more update from Swan in regards to whether it's working. Chief of Staff John Kelly, another retired general, finds the attacks dishonorable and disgusting, according to a source close to Kelly. But remember, their opinions don't matter. Only Trump's opinion matters. And they know that Trump is stupid, so they think, look, he cares whether people drink or not. So let's say that the guy drinks. And maybe Trump will be stupid enough to do our bidding and fire our political opponent. That's a 50-50 proposition, and certainly entirely possible. So now, the other line of attack against McMaster is that he's not sufficiently supportive of Israel, and by some implication, not sufficiently supportive of Jewish Americans. Preposterous. But let me tell you where it comes from, and it is gross. Some White House officials were startled by the force of a recent statement by the conservative pro-Israel group, the Zionist Organization of America. On Wednesday, ZOA's President Mort Klein issued a report accusing McMaster of being hostile towards Israel and unserious about the threats of Iran and radical Islamic terrorism. Klein called on the president to reassign him to another position where he can do no further harm on these critical national security issues. Okay, the Zionists of America is funded by Sheldon Adelson, who is a huge Republican donor, claims he's a friend of Israel, doesn't actually care about what is in Israel's interests, according to others, as you'll see, will forcefully condemn this nonsense that's made up. What he cares about is, hey, I want to pay my workers in my casinos less. I want to have lower taxes. So I'm going to get in bed with the alt-right who hate Jews? So what? I want lower taxes. So if I got to support Trump and I got to support Steve Bannon, I got to support the alt-right who's showing up with, by the way, Nazi paraphernalia in Charlottesville, so what? I'll do their bidding for them. You must be so proud. More from Axios. Bannon has told associates it has nothing to do with the hits on McMaster, calling them a spontaneous reaction against the globalists from Trump's national base. But senior White House officials don't believe him. I want you to understand what globalist means. Globalist is a term that Steve Bannon came up with to refer to the financial elite, the bankers, and other people who are controlling things behind the scenes. When you don't still know what I'm talking about because you haven't read the history of anti-Semitism, he's referring to Jews. Now, I'm not the one saying that. It's the alt-right. It's the Daily Stormer. It's those guys who go, yes, that's it. Globalist means Jews. He's on our side. We hate the Jews. I'll have more on that in a second. Now, a former senior Israeli military official had this to say. Such an attack is not mere opinion. It is an offense against the truth, against basic decency, and against the best interests of Israel as we see them. So saying the attacks against McMaster are horrible, totally not true, and an offense against Israel itself. By the way, in Charlottesville, one of the chants that they chanted in that alt-right march was, quote, "The Jews will not replace us." Now, Sam Nunberg is another person who was a Steve Bannon ally. He gets on the press now, and he goes on the attack. Because now there is an effort to fire Steve Bannon for encouraging what happened in Charlottesville. And to show people that they actually care, and they will do something about this white nationalism that's not causing violence in America. But Nunberg is very upset about that, and he says, if Steve is fired by the White House, and a bunch of generals take over the White House, there will be hell to pay. What, Charlottesville wasn't enough hell? So there's going to be further hell. You see what they're doing? This is not just about some horrible people at a rally, even though there were so many of them, thousands of them, and so many more online that follow hateful, alt-right, white nationalists all across the internet. It's now in the government. And within the government, they're trying to fire people who are not in that camp. And saying, if you fire our white nationalists, there'll be hell to pay. They're threatening the core of America. And they're doing it brazenly and openly. These people are disgusting and completely un-American. By the way, again, I gave credit earlier in the show to Republicans who stood up against the domestic terrorism, against the hatred, the KKK and the neo-Nazis, etc. in Charlottesville. Another guy standing up is actually Matt Drudge, of all people. I wouldn't have pictured me being on the same side as Ted Cruz and Matt Drudge, but here they're doing the right thing. And I'm greatly surprised by Drudge, but all the credit in the world to him for standing up against hate and saying this is not the direction you should go. But Nunberg is mad about that. So he says he went on to call out Drudge for promoting hit pieces of Bannon and sharing articles that shine a favorable light on Trump's advisor and son-in-law, Jared Kushner. Not only is he showing negative articles about Bannon, but he's showing positive articles about Kushner. I don't know if you know this, but Kushner is a Jewish American. We wouldn't have want any positive articles about him, and that drives them crazy because he's in the family, and it's harder to attack him. And so when they do, they want credit for it. So Nunberg then says Matt should go back into his hobble hole in Miami and listen to techno. Matt should understand that people like me can blow him the fuck up. Fuck Conor McGregor. Blow him the fuck up. Now, the reason he's saying Conor McGregor there is he's pronouncing fuck in the way that Conor McGregor does. McGregor has got nothing to do with any of this, okay? Just this idiot who thinks he's a tough guy trying to quote McGregor. But threats of violence right there. Very clear. He goes on. He said he went on to say that McMaster, along with White House Chief of Staff John Kelly, cannot, quote, hide behind their service, and then he could also, quote, blow the fuck up McMaster. So now we've got the alt-right saying the veterans. Who cares about veterans? Don't hide behind your service. Are you kidding me? Look at what you guys did hiding behind the troops. Oh, support the troops, support the troops. And the minute there's actually any veterans, they're like, who cares about their service? I don't care at all. Don't hide behind their service. And then he's threatening to blow up the National Security Advisor. How long are we going to tolerate this? And again, we don't do the things that they do. We don't believe in violence. We don't believe in vigilante stuff. We don't believe in extrajudicial anything. So, but within the confines of the law, the Attorney General, who is doing good work on Charlottesville, and the authorities have to start investigating these white nationalists, not for their speech. They love to hide behind that. Oh, freedom of speech. I just said I'd blow them up. I have a right to say that. No, you don't. You have a right to your political opinions. You even have a right to hate speech. You don't have a right to incite violence and promise acts of violence against government officials, including our National Security Advisor. And finally, one more from Nunberg. He said, whoever in John Swan's Axios piece is familiar with Trump's thinking should get fucking familiar with the president's base. Yet another threat. Remember, these are the same guys who said if there was any attempt to get people to vote against Trump in the Republican convention, that they would find out who was leading that, and they would go to their hotel room and knock in the middle of the night, and then do God knows what. You can call them white nationalists, you can call them brown shirts, but they're here, and they're telling you that they mean to do harm, and I don't think they're kidding. Are we America or are we not? If we're America, we stand up against this. Young Turks.
Welcome back to TYT Sports. Jason and Francis here. This is where everybody has to listen. Welcome to TYT Sports, everybody. I am your host, Francis Maxwell. Jason here, welcome to TYT Sports. Hooks and jerks, TYT Sports. Steph Curry signed with Under Armour. Tom Brady's mad, by the way. Do you hear me? Fight on TYT Sports. Actually, we'll look in the description box below instead of lying about the description box below. And it's throw up another picture of the UK bacon. And another. And it's like throwing another one. And it's really
story, and then I want you to tell me what you think about the way I reacted to the situation, and if you thought it was acceptable.
Guilty. Oh, wait, I gotta wait for the story.
I know how to cast Barry and has some stuff to say, and the world needs to hear it.
But then he became woke man. I hate it.
I love it. I love it.
Susan and I used to do this trick where we would elongate the videos so that we would look skinnier.
That is the most positive drug dealing story I've ever heard of.
Bears don't give a fuck. I trust you guys, audience. Don't let me down.
You don't believe in ghosts? Talking about pussy. So.
The food and turkey is.
Hey, we got Spy the TYT. What is this little stuff?
Oh, death.
Did you want to poop outside? No, I poop here. It's fine because I bury it. And you know what happens in that water? Turns frogs gay.
And they can't stand the establishment. And then I slipped and fell on my ass.
Guess I gotta get comfortable here.
That is tomorrow's joke, Jay. When your time is up, what wouldn't you do for just one more day?
I'm gonna try to have sex with you. If you don't want it right now, just roll up a newspaper and hit.
Hottest club I've ever been to is my bedroom. People often say that you are the Jasmine of TYT.
Yeah. Please, I am not with you, baby. You gotta let me go.
Oh God, this hurts so bad.
You're alive. You're alive. The last day is not any more valuable than today. With you guys, we've got a lot more stories for you guys, including what's happening in Charlottesville. I think the father's letter about his white nationalist son is both amazing and heartbreaking. So let me read a couple of quick tweets for you guys. The mathematician says the Republican statements against their friends was pure self-preservation for 2018. If you don't see that, you're brainless. There's a lot of truth to that, of course, but the reason why I find it important is because if all the Republican donors tell these guys, cut this shit out, we're not going to go in this direction. Well, remember, Trump needs the Republicans to stay in office. If it turns out he is in some sort of legal trouble, if all the other senators, because of their donors or whoever else is in power, have turned on him for things like this, that's still a great thing, no matter why they did it. And Art Murray writes, and unfortunately, hatred and bigotry is a place in America, and the address of that place is 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. It is really discouraging. Jared Rogers said Bannon doesn't care if everyone knows what he's doing, so long as it's everyone minus dumbass Donald. And if you think about that, that's incredibly true. Otherwise, no one would be brazen enough to do it this openly. He just, if you think I think Donald Trump is stupid, Wait till you get a load of what Steve Bannon thinks. Steve Bannon thinks he's such a
very brave
idiot.
Time for the next
Can't
round.
tell that it's Steve Bannon planting the stories at Breitbart. God, there's no one in the country who thinks Trump is dumber than Steve Bannon is. Okay, and then finally, Jared McLaughlin writes in on YouTube Super Chat. If you're on YouTube, use Super Chat. It helps the show. Plus, we get to see your comments more clearly. He says, go to TYTnetwork.com/join to support TYT beyond the Game of Thrones live watch parties. That's very nice of you. So, bless his heart, and membership does make the show happen. Thank you guys, and you get the whole show ad free. But what he's referring to there is that we watch Game of Thrones together on Sunday nights, and then we review it right afterwards.
That's the spirit.
Last night, our review was an hour and 15 minutes longer than the episode itself. But you know what? It was amazing. I'm not kidding, and it's not because of me, obviously. Fantastic. I'll make your head spin. No, Matt Meredith is basically right in the middle of that review. It's on youtube.com/whattheflick show. You can also get it as a member too. And we figured out who the three dragons are going to be written by. Three dragons will have three people on them. Watch the review to find out who they are. All right, what's next?
All right. GoDaddy has decided to cut loose the Daily Stormer, which it was hosting. And those of you who are familiar with the Daily Stormer know that it is a blog that's run by white nationalists that like to say pretty terrible things about Jewish people and minorities. And so after the murder of Heather Heyer, Daily Stormer decided to publish a pretty disgusting blog post. And
so just let's pause here for a second. In case you didn't watch the news at all this weekend, Heather Heyer was the person who was killed in Charlottesville when a domestic terrorist ran into a crowd of peaceful protesters. 19 were injured and Heather was killed. The guy we now know is a neo-Nazi and sympathized with them and praised the concentration camps of the Nazis. So that's who did it. So Daily Stormer's reaction was to blame Heather Heyer.
Right. And so they posted a blog that said the following. This is the headline or the title of the blog. Heather Heyer, woman killed in road rage incident, was a fat, childless 32-year-old slut. Well, finally, GoDaddy had enough of it, and they decided to drop the Daily Stormer. In fact, they tweeted that they were informed, or they had informed the Daily Stormer that they have 24 hours to move the domain to another provider as they violated the terms of service. Now, at that point, they decided, the Daily Stormer, the people behind it, decided to register with Google. However, Google also was not having any of it. On Monday, the Daily Stormer registered its site with Google via an automated process shortly before 11 a.m. Eastern Time. About 3 hours later, Google said it had canceled the registration and that it may take up to 48 hours for that to go into effect.
Okay, so I guess people keep getting surprised that neo-Nazis are Nazis, that they favor fascism, they favor violence, they actually hate people. They hate, and that is the point of their existence and their ideology. So, since the president and his chief strategist are catering to the alt-right, there's an attempt, and there has been this entire time, to try to create some sort of false equivalency, as Trump did after the murder of Heather Heyer, by saying many sides do it. No, there was one clear side who did it. And even the press has been pretty tough on Trump. Had this gut instinct that, calling somebody a neo-Nazi is pretty harsh. No, the site is named after a Nazi propaganda publication, literally. And they, if you go to the site, they tell you how the Jews run things, and the Jews are the worst, and blacks are the worst, and gays are the worst. They're neo-Nazis. So I'm a little annoyed that it's taken this long for people to acknowledge the most obvious thing in the world. The Daily Stormer is a pro-Nazi website.
Also, what always strikes me is the amount of emphasis there is in conservative media toward ridiculing, criticizing, and just straight out, making things up about Black Lives Matter, right? So Black Lives Matter, there was one instance of a couple people who said a chant, or what was the chant? I don't even remember. Frying like bacon, right?
Yeah, about the cops. And again,
and that's it. That's all they would touch. Like, and by the way, that wasn't even an accurate depiction of Black Lives Matter.
They were kidding around with the cops who were actually escorting them in that protest. It's all totally made up to say, and Fox News said Black Lives Matter are terrorists.
That's right.
Chant.
That's right. So the reason why I'm bringing that up is because the same people who publish this kind of garbage online, essentially ridiculing someone who was murdered because they were counter-protesting, are the same people who will turn around and say, oh, well, black people are violent. They're culturally defiant. They're dangerous. No, you're dangerous. You're dangerous, okay? People who make excuses for an individual who literally ran into a group of counter-protesters, those are the dangerous people, okay? I don't think violence should be used by anyone on any side, but to make these false equivalencies between, neo-Nazis and Black Lives Matter is absolutely ridiculous. And they know it. They know it.
It's grotesque to even have the conversation. But look, you can say, hey, freedom of speech, you got a right to be a Nazi. Congratulations. Go enjoy your right to be a Nazi. But in this case, they're condoning the violence. Heather Heyer was murdered, and they're saying, oh, she was a slut. What on God's green earth? So,
well, it gives you a sense of what they think about women as well. I mean,
let alone everything else.
Yeah.
And so you cross into a different area where you are clearly, obviously condoning the violence. So you can argue about what GoDaddy should have done, or Google should or should not do. Have at it, Hoss. You want to die on that hill of defending the right of neo-Nazis to condone violence? That's your choice. But it's. I hope you've got better things to do, and I hope you're not that bad a person. But that hope will not be met for a lot of folks in America.
All right, let's move on to the media's coverage of what happened over the weekend. There was an interesting exchange that I want to share with you guys. All right. Ken Cuccinelli was on New Day with Chris Cuomo on CNN, and another guest that was on this panel to discuss what happened over the weekend was Simone Sanders. And so the discussion was about white supremacy in the country. It was a discussion about the hate rally that took place in Virginia and the murder of Heather Heyer, who happened to be a counter-protester at the Virginia event. Now, Ken Cuccinelli seemed to disagree with Simone Sanders in regard to this rise of hate crimes in America. He seems to think, oh, well, these were isolated incidents. Simone Sanders obviously disagrees. Now, things got really heated, but I want to show you the first part of the exchange just to give you some context, and then we'll get to the most relevant part. Take a look.
You have white supremacist neo-Nazi sympathizers apparently in the White House, and Sebastian Gorka and Steve Bannon. This is not just rhetoric. This is very real for people all over America. And I would suggest that we have to, that is not an outrageous overstatement. If you know what, in Germany, wait, Chris, in Germany, there are no statues and monuments of Nazi soldiers. Children do not go to schools named after Nazi generals. But in the United States of America, our children walk through parks, walk down streets, and go to schools named after generals of the Confederacy, folks who, if in present day, took up arms against the government, would be considered treasonous because they felt it was their right to own people that looked like me in this country because it benefited them economically. That's what this is about. And so there is no overstatement here. These are the facts. And if we would like to, that's what the Robert E. Lee said. That's what they were marching for.
A bunch of racists and neo-Nazis to get together. That was a local blogger who got a permit.
Okay, so first of all, let's not forget, he complained that she kept cutting him off. But if you note there, actually, he cut her off because she wasn't done with her statement.
And that was the beginning of the exchange, okay? So it basically starts off with her making, her argument. He interrupts her a couple times. And then later on, when she interrupts him, he doesn't take so kindly to it.
Yeah, so before we get there, let me just say substantively, they created this monster, this Frankenstein, with their Southern strategy and, let's go pick up the Southern white voters who are disaffected by the civil rights movement. And now two different RNC chiefs have apologized for the Southern strategy because it was clearly racist. So now the Ken Cuccinellis of the world come out and go, what? Did we do a racist strategy that wound up having the Republican Party be the home of the racists? It's not exclusively racist in the Republican Party, not at all. And there are well-meaning people, and there are Christians who think that their pastor told them to be a Republican, or God wants them to be a Republican. There are people who are just greedy and want tax cuts, no matter how much money they have. There's a million reasons. Some people like war, right? But where are the overwhelming majority of racists in this country? They reside in the Republican Party. And it's not an accident of fate. They went and tried to appeal to them, and they did. That's what Simone Sanders is partly pointing out here. That's why Ken Cuccinelli is so upset, not because she's talking over him. He interrupted her.
That's right. So let's take a look at the second part of this exchange.
What is your point of disagreement exactly?
Well, my point of disagreement is that was an excuse to bring these groups together. The local blogger who got the permit to protest the removal of the Robert E. Lee statue then blew this up. That was an excuse. Look at how they got the permit. And can I finish, Simone? Will you just shut up for a minute and let me finish?
Pardon me, sir. You don't get to tell me to shut up on national television.
Hold on.
I'm sorry. Under no circumstances do you get to speak to me in that matter. You should exhibit some decorum. And understand that you were
Hold on, guys. Both of you stop for a second. Simone, now we
on this program, and under no circumstances.
Ken and Simone, hold on a second.
So you
need a reset. You need a reset.
So, look, Simone obviously gets upset there, understandably so. And part of the reason for that is, well, anybody tells you to shut up, you're going to get upset, right? But the other part of it is because it's a well-worn tactic of the right to filibuster on TV and to speak for as long as humanly possible so the other side does not have as much airtime. In this case, Simone spoke plenty. She did, right? Mm-hmm. But frustrated by that tactic, Cuccinelli, who, as part of his party, they've all done that over and over and over again. When it's turned on them, he's like, well, you can't do that to me. I do it to you. So why don't you just shut up? What do you mean white supremacy? I mean, I just liked it. One of the guys who were in the rally, they said, no, I'm just trying to protect how things were. So I'm not a white supremacist. I just want to protect our power. No, maybe you don't understand what you're saying, but and Cuccinelli is from a very right-wing part of the party who thinks, who is she to tell me what I can and can't say on TV? And so why don't you just shut up about it?
Also, what she was saying wasn't even opinion. She's literally sharing accurate historical happenings and how we got to where we are right now. And so, he wants to minimize what's going on, minimize away. But the reality is there is an uprising of white nationalists in this country. Things got incredibly violent over the weekend. People are now concerned for their safety. They're concerned to speak out or worried to speak out. And so you can pretend like it's not a problem at all. But I think, Republican politicians like Ken Cuccinelli know it's a problem, and they're okay with that problem. That's how it appears.
So if you're not okay with it, then you should chase those people out of your party. But you've let them vote for you all these years, and you've stood by quietly as that happened. So don't pretend that all of a sudden you're aggrieved and shocked and chagrined to find out the racists are on your side. And as you protect the Confederate statues of people who fought to keep slavery, don't pretend that you're shocked and chagrined to find out the racists on your side. By the way, to be fair, I did once tell someone to shut up in an interview.
You did.
Yeah. And that was 10 years ago, and it was because he was doing the right-wing tactic of never letting the other side speak.
Right.
And so I told him that I'm not going to let him get away with it. You know who that turned out to be? Jay Sekulow, who is now Donald Trump's lawyer. He was a fringe, absurd character, not taken seriously back in the day. Now, he's the lawyer for the President of the United States. So the things that go bump in the night are real, and they're in the White House.
Yeah. All right, we got to take a break.
Yep. All right, when we come back, more updates on this, including that touching letter from the dad disavowing his white nationalist son.
He's the war hero. He's the war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay?
He said I had small hands. They're not small. I never heard that one before.
Do you trust the establishment media?
The United States economy has never been better. Monetary policy is spectacular. Everybody thought Jamie Dimon was the king of Wall Street last week. Well, it might be Ken Lewis now. He takes the crown. The best sales force out there is Merrill Lynch, and now it goes to BNA. It's pretty amazing.
Buying opportunity. I do think this is a buying opportunity. We're going to see a stabilization and just a tremendous snapback. The rally will be jaw-dropping.
The Occupy Wall Street movement is not a spontaneous protest against economic inequality. This is what we mean by the establishment press. It is a well thought out campaign to bring down the infrastructure of this country. The embarrassment is that I'm given credibility in this world because of the disappointment that the public has in what the news media does. I'm the former chairman of the Veterans Committee, and I've learned a little bit about the cost of war. What the president is trying to do, and I agree with him, is to do everything that we can without going to war. So you say to your critics, I'm talking about Democratic critics, who say, you know what, he's really just a socialist pacifist.
I very rarely read in any coverage of Bernie that he's a socialist.
Bernie Sanders is a socialist, for God's sake.
Most analysts are saying that Hillary Clinton's going to win in a landslide.
I continue to believe Mr. Trump will not be president. I got Trump at 279, 259.
Wait a minute.
I know you don't believe that. We're not going to be polite anymore. You know what we're going to do? We're going to fight back. Fight for a free and independent media. We're done with politeness. We fight back. We are going to put together the best investigative reporting team in the country. You like George Chapman in the field, challenging Democrats? He's the one that took down Donald Brazil. Thank God for that. I'll give me 10 George Chapman. Look at the damage I can do. TYT will give you the 4 horse, and we will let them gallop. Help unleash real journalism in the country. You don't need anybody else anymore but you guys. TYTnetwork.com/go. This is going to be amazing.
Can we eat in here?
So we got a quick story for you guys in this segment, which is both radio and online. And afterwards, we'll have many of the follow-up stories for the online audience at TYTnetwork.com. What's next, Anna?
All right. Those who attended the hate rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, are now facing some of the consequences for being identified as neo-Nazis or white nationalists. One of those individuals is actually a former employee of Top Dog, which is a hot dog chain. Now, he worked at this hot dog chain in Berkeley, and apparently the Twitter account, Yes, You're Racist, identified him, put up his photo, and then his employer was notified that he took part in this hate rally. As a result, he was fired. His name's Cole White. No longer works for the company. It's interesting because a lot of these guys are super young, like college-aged, early 20s, late teens, and look, you put yourself out there in this way, you're in a public place, you have no reasonable expectation of privacy, there are consequences for your behavior.
Yeah, and so you have a right to freedom of speech, and nobody stopped you from going to the rally. You went to the rally, you were proud of it, and you don't have a right to hide your identity. I've been to rallies, political rallies, people take pictures of me, that makes sense, right? I'm at that rally, I'm in public. Now, I don't know about it contacting their employer. I wouldn't do it. I don't. That's not the direction I'd go. But if the employer finds out and doesn't want that person in their establishment because they think it'll drive down business, I believe that's called a free market.
Right, and also, look, everyone, regardless of what you get involved in publicly, risks losing their job if they're identified, right? And so, I mean, if I was at this rally and someone took my photo and posted it all over the internet, and then you fired me, can I cry about you firing me?
Well, that's their expertise. So they will cry and cry and cry. They're like, what? I just wanted to hate black people and Jews and gays in peace. Now, what? You're not going to let me do that? No, you're missing it. We are going to let you do that. It is a free country.
Yeah, the government lets you do that,
but
right?
I'm pretty sure the Top Dog is not part of the United States government. And so you have a right to freedom of speech. You don't have a right to be popular. You don't have the right to a particular job. You don't have a right to force a private company to do your bidding.
You also don't have the right to criticism, right? So if you participate in any form of political speech, people get to criticize you. That doesn't mean that your freedom of speech is being violated. That's not the government banning you from saying those things. It's private citizens or your employer practicing their First Amendment right by criticizing your form of speech.
So, if you're proud of it, keep on being proud. But that's the situation, and Top Dog is apparently not proud of it. Young Turks, we'll be right back. We're back, and that last break's always super short, and I've got some great tweets for you guys, and finally Gabby Marita gets a t-shirt, so, alright, you'll see it in a sec. Davey M says, the president never loses sight of the real victim in this tragedy, himself. Right, because they all, why am I getting criticized, just because I wouldn't call out the Klan, oh, boo-hoo, I'm the victim. Casey Kumpel writes in, Cuccinelli needed a tall glass of shut-up juice. That's funny. Everybody go watch Mad as Hell, the documentary about us, and you'll see a reference to that. And then Gabby wrote a wonderful tweet. Call Confederate statues what they really are. The world's largest participation trophies.
Oh. Wow. Nailed it.
Yeah. I mean, like, hey, we participated in the war, we got our ass kicked, and we were traitors. But can I get a statue anyway? I never thought about it that way, Gabby. Excellent tweet. So let's get her a t-shirt of her choice. ShopTYT.com for TYT merch. And member shout-outs today are Julie DiMaggio and Jason Tekever. So Jason and Julie, much love. We'll talk to you guys in the post-game, as we do with everybody who's a member. TYTnetwork.com/join to become a member. All right, what's next, Hannah?
All right. White nationalists or neo-Nazis who decided to participate in the hate rally in Virginia this past weekend are now being identified online, and it has some consequences. For instance, they're being called what they are: racist or neo-Nazis or white nationalists, and apparently they don't like being called those names. In fact, they completely disagree with the way they're being portrayed in the media. Now, I'm going to give you two examples of these guys, and you can judge for yourselves whether or not you consider them racist. Now, the first is a student at the University of Nevada at Reno, and he's actually prominently featured in one of the photos of the hate rally that's being, basically shared on the internet. It's gone viral. Here's what he has to say about the image. I came to this march for the message that white European culture has a right to be here, just like every other culture. It is not perfect. There are flaws to it, of course. However, I do believe that the replacement of the statue, meaning the statue of Robert E. Lee, will be the slow replacement of white heritage within the United States and the people who fought and defended and built their homeland. Robert E. Lee is a great example of that. He wasn't a perfect man, but I want to honor and respect what he stood for during his time.
Well, he stood for slavery. Now, I know that there's a lot of revisionist history saying, no, it was for states' rights. State right to do what? Oh, right, keep slaves. And Robert E. Lee, yes, was a very good tactician on the battlefield, kept the South in the war far longer than their resources should have kept them in the war. Mm-hmm. So you could, I guess, look at Genghis Khan or Attila the Hun or Rommel, or Stalin at Stalingrad, or Robert E. Lee, and say, hey, well, that was better military tactics than we would have expected. He's a good tactician. And if he had won, they would have enslaved all these people and made sure that they did not have any rights or freedom or liberty, and we would get to own them and rape them and lynch them and do all the things that Robert E. Lee and all the Confederates wanted to do to them. Don't pretend he didn't fight for Confederacy. Don't pretend he didn't fight for slavery, because he did. So when you say you want to protect that heritage, well, what you're saying is very, very clear. Was there a part of Robert E. Lee that I missed, that he's, just loved, maybe he loved planting, gardening, and that's why this guy likes him. He's like, he's misunderstood. He was really a better gardener than he was a Confederate general. Mm-hmm. But that's not what he's known for. He's known for protecting the Confederacy.
And he's known for being a traitor to the country. That's what the Confederates were. They were traitors to the country. Right?
And by the way, the country is called America.
That's right.
And so you're going to celebrate traitors to America. Don't you dare chant USA, USA, because that's the exact opposite of what Robert E. Lee and the Confederates stood for. I know a lot of folks in the South are touchy about Robert E. Lee, because they're like, oh, but he was such a great general. Oh, if we could have just kept our slaves if Robert E. Lee had won. All right, screw you and that ideology, and yes, that is racist. And when he talks about how they defended, how they built their homeland, well, that's also not really true. You got slaves to build your homeland, because those Confederates were lazy. They were thugs who, through violence, enslaved other people, and they were lazy sons of bitches who didn't want to do their own work. So understand what you're defending. And if you're still okay with that, that's fine. If you think that's not racist, okay, we have a difference of opinion.
Also, I just want to quickly comment on the first part of his statement, because he said, I came to this march for the message that white European culture has a right to be here. Okay, so I agree, but who told you that white European culture is barred from the country? and doesn't have a right to be here. Because, I don't know, maybe Alex Jones told you that, and you're drinking that Kool-Aid, and you've bought into the fear-mongering, and you're so afraid that you're going to go ahead and join a march where, people literally get murdered for disagreeing with you and counter-protesting.
Hey, snowflakes. First of all, 44 and a half out of the 45 presidents were white Europeans. So you run the country for a long, long time. And by the way, we're, unlike you, are decent human beings and think, I'm not going to judge a person by their race. And so if there's a great white candidate like Bernie Sanders, we love him and we support him. We don't make those same kind of racial assumptions that you guys do. You know what you do? You play identity politics, and you're all snowflakes when you say, oh my God, white European culture is being trashed because somebody said happy holidays to me. Wait, somebody didn't say happy? No, somebody said happy holidays to me. Can you imagine how offended I am? Because it should be Merry Christmas. Make the Jews say Merry Christmas. Make the Muslims and the atheists say Merry Christmas. What? I'm just trying to protect white European culture. I see what you're doing.
Maybe we're just not seeing how difficult it is to be a white male in the United States.
Oh, so difficult. I mean, all those CEO jobs. Well, Steve Bannon says Asians are taking some of them in Silicon Valley. How dare they? I thought you wanted to celebrate meritocracy. Not so much when it's not whites.
No. All right. He also continues to say, I hope that the people sharing the photo are willing to listen that I'm not the angry racist they see in that photo. Let's take a look at graphic 4 again. Not an angry racist. Just holding a torch in the middle in a sea of insanely racist white dudes who... Anyway.
Okay,
right.
Look. Just let me be super clear about that.
He doesn't look angry at all.
No. If you're an idiot white nationalist out there and you're watching this video and you think, no, how do you know they're racist? They showed up with torches in an homage to the Ku Klux Klan. The NAACP doesn't show up with torches. Great white leaders in this country didn't show up with torches. The Klan shows up with torches. They showed up with torches to defend a Confederate statue, and then they chanted blood and soil, which is a Nazi chant. So here's where you should have gotten off the train when they handed you the torch. If you didn't want to be called a racist, here's where you should have gotten off the train when they were chanting White Lives Matter as if they're it's an obvious way of trying to say, blacks don't have no legitimate grievance in this country. Okay, fine. A lot of you like that chant because that's just, not white nationalism, as Haas calls it, light nationalism, right? Okay, how about when they chanted the Nazi chant? How about when they chanted against the Jews? The Jews will not rule us. Look, I'm not saying everybody in that crowd chanted that, and maybe some of them didn't hear that chant. But they did chant those Nazi chants. Those were all opportunities to leave if you weren't a racist. But even if you didn't hear the chants, even if you want to make a million excuses, they handed you a torch at a Southern rally in honor of the Confederacy. That is not subtle.
You were also a student from Nevada. You're a student from Nevada, which means you spent your resources to fly to Virginia just to participate in this march, right? So I'm not buying this whole no, I want peace and love for everyone. And BS. That's complete BS. He knows it. He just doesn't like the backlash that comes along with showing your face in public while you're associated with a hate march.
Yeah, all right. And let me just be super clear about other things. He didn't run anybody over, okay? And not everybody in the crowd did, and so if you want to say, hey, I got a right to be for white nationalism and white supremacy, just say it, man. Just at least be honest about it. Don't go to that rally and then pretend you're not for white supremacy. So that's all we're asking for. I'm not asking for anything more than that. I'm not asking for anybody to lock you up. I just want you to do what you did at the rally. Raise your hand with a torch and explain that you're for white nationalism, which you are. And you just say, but despite the fact that I've told you everything that I'm in favor of, I don't want you to hold it against me. No, you don't have that right. You have the right to freedom of speech. You don't have a right to be liked.
All right, and then the second guy is actually the president of college Republicans at Washington State University. He's upset that people are referring to him as racist. Let's go to graphic 10. He says that he identifies as paleo-conservative and right-wing libertarian, not as white supremacist or alt-right, a term that he feels is a slur.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hope his feelings aren't hurt, though. I mean, did you get triggered by that? Did you get triggered before you picked up the torch or after you picked up the torch?
All right, let's move on. A father has disowned his son after finding out that he participated in the hate rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. His name is Pierce Teft, and he has openly condemned his own son because of his participation in white nationalism. He wrote a letter out to the public in regard to how he feels about all of this. And he says, I have shared my home and hearth with friends and acquaintances of every race, gender, and creed. I have taught all of my children that all men and women are created equal, that we must love each other all the time.
All the same.
Oh, all the same. Sorry about that. Evidently, Peter has chosen to unlearn these lessons, much to my and his family's heartbreak and distress. We have been silent up until now, but now we see that this was a mistake. It was the silence of good people that allowed the Nazis to flourish the first time around, and it is the silence of good people that is allowing them to flourish now.
So this is a hell of a thing for Dad to have to write, and it is just like he said, it's heartbreaking, man. And you wonder, what did I do wrong? How did my son turn out like this? And to disavow someone that's your child, it's really something you never ever want to do. But if there's a time to do it, it's when your son's a Nazi. So it takes great courage for him to be able to do that. Now, other people do it under irrational circumstances. So Alan Keyes, a well-known conservative, disavowed his daughter because of the way she was born. She was a lesbian, and so he said, "Oh, God made you that way? No, then I hate you, and I never want to see you again." And so now, in this case, Pierce Teft is doing it out of love instead of out of hate. And he's saying, we taught you that everybody's equal, which is the core of America, and we taught you to love people, not hate people. And my guess is they're trying to shake him out of the cult-like, hatred that he's glommed onto. And these guys, some of them online, they're groupthink. They have their talking points. They say the same thing over and over again that they were taught by alt-right websites. They can't see how ironic half of their statements are. And then they'll say things like, I'm for white nationalism, but don't call me a racist. No, by definition, that's racist. I mean, the next thing you're going to say is, I'm a Nazi, but don't call me anti-Semitic.
So Pierce Teft continues to say that his son Peter is not welcome at our family gatherings any longer. He even shared a personal story that I think takes a lot of courage to share. He says that his son once joked, the thing about us fascists is, it's not that we don't believe in freedom of speech. You can say whatever you want. We'll just throw you in an oven.
So, I want to give credit to Pierce Teft here, because it takes courage to call that out, especially when it's in your own family. And I want you to understand the heavy warning that he's giving us. And it reminds me of a story I read about a German industrialist who the Nazis showed gas chambers to, and they were bragging to him because he's an industrialist and he's part of the machinery of Germany's industry at the time, and he was a person in power, and they were showing him how well the gas chamber worked. And as he saw the people screaming and it took 20 minutes to die and their fingernails buried in the walls, right afterwards he immediately got on a train and risked his life to tell the Americans, you have to come invade us. What they're doing is horrific. So people who believe in that ideology, they're not interested in a battle of ideas. They're not interested in a debate. They're not interested in freedom of speech. They believe in violence. And violence is what we got at Charlottesville. And so here's a kid who was at that rally by the words of his own dad, and then an uncle as well, and many people in the family unfortunately have come forward and said, no, he's dangerous, because they think violence works. We can't seize power with our ideas. They are deeply unpopular. So They think we seize power through violence. So it's up to us to make sure, us meaning all of America, the government, just decent people in America, to say you're allowed to believe anything you want. It's a free country. You're allowed to say anything you want. It's a free country. But you're not allowed to take violent action. And that's where we draw the line. And that's what happened in Charlottesville this weekend. So, and this is a family saying, we're drawing the line. You're allowed to believe those things, son, but you're not allowed to be in our family and spread that kind of hatred to other people that come to our house. In other words, the dad's saying, not in our house.
Mm-hmm.
We should say that across America. All right.
I think we're done.
Okay. It's a crazy day. Okay. We'll have more for you. We didn't even get to a story today. We didn't prep it because we knew partly because we didn't know we had a sense we didn't have time. But Trump goes after another ally, doing himself further damage. We'll tell you about it tomorrow. The good news is he's so dumb that TikTok. I really, and you could say, no, it's naive, it's not right. But remember, I'm not the naive guy. I'm the one who said Trump could win. And I'm here to tell you, time's running out on him. He's crossed too many lines and too many allies. So we'll tell you more about that tomorrow. And of course, the postgame will have more for you guys. Bye-bye.